The year was 2074. Humanity had finally reached the stars. They were no longer alone in the universe. The Galactic Council had accepted Earth into their ranks just 5 years ago. Now, alien visitors walked freely through human cities. They studied human culture. They tried to understand these strange creatures from the small blue planet. Ambassador stood in the middle of a large warehouse in Texas. His species had lived among the stars for 10,000 years. His skin was pale blue. His eyes were large and golden. He had seen many worlds. He had met many species, but humans confused him the most. Around him, dozens of human workers moved with purpose. They carried tools. They pushed carts filled with metal pieces. They talked and laughed. In the center of the warehouse sat a pile of twisted metal. It was barely recognizable as anything at all. "What is this place?" asked his human guide. The guide was a woman named Sarah. She was 60 years old. Her hair was gray. Her hands were rough from years of work. She smiled at the alien ambassador. "This is the Phoenix Project," Sarah said. "We restore old military aircraft here, machines from past wars." Looked at the twisted metal again. He could not understand what he was seeing. "That pile of scrap," he said. "What is it?" "That is a HFY helicopter," Sarah said. Her voice was soft. It was full of respect. "It was shot down in Vietnam in 1969. That was over 100 years ago. We found it in the jungle last year. Now we are going to restore it." Was silent for a moment. His species did not understand war. They had evolved past conflict millions of years ago. Violence was a primitive concept to them. "You will rebuild this destroyed machine?" asked. "Why? It serves no purpose now. You have faster ships, better technology. This thing cannot even leave the atmosphere." Sarah did not answer right away. She walked toward the pile of metal. She touched it gently, like a mother touching her child. "Ambassador," she said, "do you know what happened to the crew of this helicopter?" Shook his head. "There were 4 men inside when it went down," Sarah said. "The pilot was Captain James Walker. He was 26 years old. The co-pilot was Lieutenant Michael Torres. He was 24. The crew chief was Sergeant David. He was 22. And the door gunner was Private First Class Robert Jackson. He was only 19. She paused. Her eyes were wet. "None of them came home," she continued. "For 50 years their families did not know what happened to them. Their bodies were never found. They were listed as missing in action. Their names were put on a wall in Washington, but their families never had closure." Listened, he still did not understand. "Then last year we found this helicopter," Sarah said. "It was buried in mud, covered by jungle, hidden for over a century, and inside we found them. We found their remains. We found their dog tags. We found personal items, letters they never sent, pictures of their families." She looked at directly. "We brought them home, Ambassador, after all this time. We brought them home to their families, and now we will restore this helicopter. We will make it fly again. We will honor their sacrifice." Felt something strange. His species did not have emotions like humans did, but he felt something. It was like a small spark in his chest. "This seems like a lot of effort," he said slowly, "for 4 individuals who died so long ago, in a war that your species barely remembers." Sarah smiled. It was a sad smile. "That is exactly why we do it, Ambassador, because we do remember. Humans always remember. We never forget our fallen. No matter how much time passes, no matter how far we travel into the stars, we carry our dead with us, always." Looked around the warehouse again. He saw the workers more clearly now. He noticed something he had missed before. On the wall there were photographs, hundreds of them, old black and white pictures, young men in uniforms, smiling faces frozen in time. "Who are they?" asked. "They are the ones we lost," Sarah said. "In Vietnam, in other wars before and after, every life, every name, every face, we remember them all." She walked over to a workbench. There was a small box on it. She opened it carefully. Inside were 4 metal tags on chains, dog tags, worn and rusted, but still readable. James Walker, Michael Torres, David, Robert Jackson, she read. These men died for their country. They died for each other. They were someone's sons, someone's brothers, someone's friends. And even though 100 years have passed, they still matter. They will always matter. Was quiet for a long time. His golden eyes moved from the dog tags to the pile of twisted metal, then to the photographs on the wall, then back to Sarah. I think, he said slowly, I am beginning to understand something about your species. Sarah looked at him with curiosity. What is that, Ambassador? You humans said. You are very strange. You fight wars. You destroy each other. But then you spend generations honoring those who fell. You never let go. You never move on. You carry your history like a weight on your backs. He paused. I'm not sure if this is a strength or a weakness. Sarah laughed softly. Neither are we, Ambassador, but it is who we are, and we would not change it for anything. She gestured to the helicopter wreckage. Would you like to stay? Would you like to watch us work? It will take months, maybe years, but when we are done, this pile of metal will fly again, and the spirits of those 4 young men will finally be at peace. Considered the offer. His diplomatic schedule was full. There were meetings to attend, treaties to discuss, but something told him to stay, something he could not explain. Yes, he said, I would like that very much. And so it began, the restoration of a helicopter, the honoring of 4 souls, and the education of an alien who thought he knew everything about the universe. He was about to learn that the universe still had secrets, and the greatest secret of all was the human heart. The weeks passed slowly. Ambassador returned to the warehouse every day. He watched the humans work. He asked questions, many questions. The workers were happy to answer. They were proud of what they did. The first task was to catalog every piece of the helicopter. There were thousands of them. Some were as big as a door. Others were as small as a fingernail. Each piece was cleaned, photographed, numbered, and placed on a massive table that stretched across the entire building. Watched this process with growing fascination. His species used robots for such tasks, machines that were perfect, that never made mistakes, but the humans used their hands, their eyes, their hearts. You could use automation, said one day. It would be faster, more efficient. Sarah shook her head. She was examining a piece of metal with a magnifying glass. This is not about efficiency, Ambassador. Every piece of this helicopter was touched by those 4 men. They sat in these seats. They held these controls. Their sweat and blood are part of this metal now. We owe it to them to touch every piece ourselves. Did not argue, he was learning. One afternoon, an old woman came to the warehouse. She was very old. Her back was bent. She walked with a cane, but her eyes were sharp. They were full of life. Sarah greeted her at the door. They embraced like old friends. Ambassador, Sarah said, I would like you to meet Mrs. Walker. She is 91 years old. She was married to Captain James Walker, the pilot of this helicopter. Looked at the old woman. He did not know what to say. His species lived for hundreds of years. Death was not common among them. They did not understand grief. You are the alien, said. Her voice was strong. Sarah told me about you. She said you want to understand why we do this. Yes, admitted, I am trying to understand. Smiled, it was a gentle smile, full of years, full of memories. Come with me, she said. Let me tell you about my husband. They walked to a quiet corner of the warehouse. There was a small table there. On it were photographs, letters, personal items recovered from the helicopter. Picked up a photograph. It showed a young man in a uniform. He was handsome. He was smiling. He looked full of hope. This is James, she said. This picture was taken the day before he shipped out. He was so young, so brave. He believed in what he was doing. He believed he was protecting people. She set down the photograph. She picked up a letter. It was yellowed with age. The paper was fragile. "This letter was in his pocket when the helicopter went down," she said. "It was never sent. It was to me. I only read it last year, after they found the wreckage." Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice stayed steady. "He wrote about coming home, about the life we would have together, about the children we would raise, the house we would build. He wrote about growing old with me." She looked at directly. "He never got to do any of those things, Ambassador. He died in a jungle, thousands of miles from home. He was 26 years old." Felt that strange sensation again, that spark in his chest. It was stronger now. "I am sorry," he said. The words felt inadequate, but he meant them. "I waited for him," continued, "for years. They told me he was missing. They could not find him. They did not know what happened. But I waited. I never married again. I never stopped hopping." She touched the letter gently. "And now, after all this time, I have this. His final words to me, his love, his dreams, they survived, even when he did not." She looked at the helicopter wreckage across the warehouse. "That pile of metal carried my husband on his last flight. It was there when he died. It protected his body for 100 years. And now it will fly again. And when it does, a part of James will fly with it. He will finally get to come home, in a way he never could before." Was silent. He watched the workers, he watched Sarah. He was beginning to see something his species had never understood. Humans were not just individuals, they were connected, to each other, to their past, to their future. Death did not end those connections. Time did not break them. They stretched across generations, across centuries, forever. "Ambassador said, I want to show you something." She reached into her pocket. She pulled out a small box. Inside was a ring, a simple gold wedding band. "James was wearing this when he died," she said. "They found it with his remains. It still has our wedding date engraved inside." She handed the ring to. He held it carefully. It was light, simple, but it felt heavy with meaning. "For 100 years this ring was lost," said. "In the mud, in the jungle, in the darkness, but it waited, just like I waited, and now it has come back to me." She took the ring back. She slipped it onto her finger, next to her own wedding band. "We humans do not give up, Ambassador. We do not forget. We do not stop loving. Not even death can make us stop. That is why we restore this helicopter. That is why we remember these men, because love never dies, and neither does hope." Stood in silence. He had lived for 300 years. He had visited 1,000 worlds. He had seen wonders that humans could not imagine, but he had never seen anything like this. An old woman, a lost ring, a letter never sent, a love that survived a century. This was the power of humanity, not their technology, not their ships, not their weapons. It was their hearts, their stubborn, unbreakable hearts. "I understand now," said softly. Smiled at him. "No, Ambassador," she said kindly. "You are beginning to understand, but there is still more to learn. Stay, watch, listen, and you will see what humans are truly capable of." Nodded. He would stay. He would watch. He would learn. Because he realized now that humans were not a primitive species struggling to reach the stars. They were something else entirely, something the galaxy had never seen before. They were the species that never forgot, that never gave up, that carried their dead with them across time and space. And that made them more powerful than any weapon, more dangerous than any enemy, more beautiful than any star. The restoration continued, day by day, piece by piece, and watched it all. He was no longer just an observer. He was a student, learning from the greatest teachers in the universe. Humans, 6 months had passed since the restoration began. The warehouse had changed. What was once a pile of twisted metal was now starting to look like a helicopter again. The frame was rebuilt. The tail boom was attached. The cockpit was taking shape. Ambassador was there every day. He had become part of the team. The workers no longer saw him as a strange alien. They saw him as a friend. They taught him about the helicopter, about its history, about the men who flew it. But today was different. Today, something unexpected happened. A young man walked into the warehouse. He was in his 30s. He had dark skin, strong features. He looked nervous. He looked like he was searching for something. Sarah went to greet him. "Can I help you?" she asked. The young man swallowed hard. "My name is Jackson," he said. "I am looking for information about a soldier named Robert Jackson. He was a door gunner on a helicopter in Vietnam. He was my great-grandfather." Sarah's eyes went wide. She turned to look at the helicopter, then back at Robert Jackson, she repeated. "PFC Robert Jackson. He was on this helicopter. He was one of the 4 men we are honoring." Nodded, his eyes were wet. "I never knew him," he said. "He died before my grandfather was born. My great-grandmother was pregnant when he shipped out. He never knew he was going to be a father." Sarah took his hand gently. "Come with me," she said. "There is something you need to see." She led him across the warehouse, followed. They stopped at a table covered with personal items, things recovered from the helicopter. Sarah picked up a small object. It was a photograph, old and faded, but still clear enough to see. It showed a young black woman. She was beautiful. She was smiling. She was pregnant. "This was in your great-grandfather's pocket," Sarah said. "He carried it with him, always." Took the photograph with trembling hands. "That is my great-grandmother," he whispered. "Jackson. She died 10 years ago. She was 95. He stared at the photograph. Tears ran down his face. "She talked about him all the time," continued. "About how much he loved her, how excited he was about the baby, how he promised to come home. She waited for him her whole life. She never married again." Watch this scene. He felt that spark in his chest again. It was growing stronger, warmer. "There is more," Sarah said softly. She picked up another item. It was a small box, wooden, handmade, opened it carefully. Inside was a letter and a small carved toy, a wooden bird made by hand with love. "Robert made this," Sarah explained. "The letter says he carved it for his child. He was going to give it when he came home. He never got the chance." Held the wooden bird. It was small, simple, but it was the most precious thing he had ever seen. "My great-grandmother told me stories," said. "She said Robert was always carving things. He made her a jewelry box, a picture frame, little animals. He had magic in his hands." He looked at the bird. "This was meant for my grandfather, who never knew his father, who grew up without him, who spent his whole life wondering." Looked at Sarah. "My grandfather is still alive," he said. "He is 85 years old. He lives in Georgia. He always wanted to know what happened to his father. He always wanted some connection to him." Sarah smiled. "Then take it to him," she said. "Take the bird, take the letter, take the photograph. They belong to your family now." Shook his head. "No," he said firmly. "They belong here, with the helicopter, with the other men. My great-grandfather would not want to be separated from his crew. They died together. They should stay together." He paused. "But could I bring my grandfather here? Could he see this place? See what you are doing?" Sarah nodded immediately. "Of course he is welcome here, any time." 2 weeks later, an old man arrived at the warehouse. His name was William Jackson. He was 85 years old. He moved slowly, but his eyes were sharp, like his great-grandson. When he saw the helicopter, he stopped. He stood completely still. For a long time he just stared. Then he walked forward, step by step, until he was standing next to the aircraft. He reached out, he touched the metal, and he began to cry. "Hello, Dad," he whispered. "I finally found you." Watch from a distance. He saw the old man, the tears, the love. A son meeting his father for the first time, 85 years late, but not too late. William stayed for hours. He touched every piece of the helicopter. He read his father's letter a dozen times. He held the wooden bird like it was made of gold. Before he left, he spoke to. "You are the alien everyone talks about," William said. "Yes," replied, "I am ambassador of the—" William studied him for a moment. "Do your people have fathers, sons, families?" "We do," said, "but our connections are different, less emotional, more practical." William nodded slowly. "Then you probably do not understand why I came all this way, why I am crying over a pile of old metal, why I care about a man I never met." "I am trying to understand," admitted. William smiled. It was a sad smile, but also proud. "My father was 19 years old when he died," William said. "He never held me, never taught me to ride a bike, never saw me graduate, never met my children, he missed everything." He looked at the helicopter. "But he loved me, before I was born, before he even knew if I was a boy or a girl. He carved that bird for me. He wrote that letter to me. He thought about me. In his last moments he was thinking about coming home to me." William touched his chest. "He has been here my whole life, in my heart, in my blood, in my memories of him. And now I know he carried me too, in that photograph, in that little wooden bird. We carried each other, across 100 years, across death itself." He looked at directly. "That is what it means to be human, ambassador. We are never alone. Even when we are never forgotten. Even when we are gone, we live on in each other, forever." Had no response. He just stood there, feeling something he had never felt before. Connection. The restoration was more than halfway done now. The helicopter was taking shape, but something else was taking shape too. Was changing. He could feel it deep inside. He was becoming something new. Something almost human. The restoration was nearly complete. After 14 months of work, the helicopter looked like new. Its green paint shone under the warehouse lights. Its rotors were polished and mounted. Its engine had been rebuilt using parts from museums and old factories. It was beautiful. It was perfect. It was ready to fly. But something happened that changed everything. It was a Tuesday morning. Sarah was checking the final systems, was watching as always. Then a message came, an urgent message from halfway across the galaxy. The Galactic Council was calling an emergency session. Representatives from 200 species would gather. They would discuss a crisis that threatened all life in the known universe. A species called the had emerged from deep space. They were conquerors, destroyers. They had never been defeated. They had consumed 100 worlds in the past decade. Now they were heading toward the Galactic Council's territory, and they had sent a message. Surrender or be destroyed. Received the news with shock. He had to leave immediately. The council needed every ambassador, every voice, every mind. But before he left, he went to Sarah. "I must go," he said. "The situation is very serious. They are powerful. Our combined forces may not be enough to stop them." Sarah listened calmly. "What will you do?" she asked. Was silent for a moment. "We will discuss options," he said. "Many species want to surrender. They say resistance is pointless. They have never lost a battle. They have destroyed entire civilizations." He paused. "Others want to fight, but they are afraid. Fear is spreading through the council. Panic, despair. Many believe this is the end." Sarah looked at the helicopter, then back at. "And what do you believe, Ambassador?" Hesitated. "I do not know," he admitted. "Before I came here, I would have agreed that surrender was logical. They are stronger. Fighting would only bring more death, more suffering. Why resist the inevitable?" He touched the helicopter's side. "But now I am not so sure. I have learned things here, things I never knew before, things my species never understood." Sarah smiled. "You have learned about humans," she said. "Yes," agreed. "I have learned that you never give up, you never surrender, you fight even when you cannot win. You remember even when you should forget. You love even when it hurts." He looked at her. Is this wisdom, or is it foolishness? Sarah thought about the question. Maybe it is both, she said. Maybe that is what makes us human. We know we cannot live forever. We know we will lose people we love. We know the universe is vast and cold and indifferent, but we fight anyway. We love anyway. We hope anyway. She pointed at the helicopter. 4 young men flew this machine into battle 100 years ago. They knew they might die. They were afraid, but they went anyway because they believed in something bigger than themselves. They believed in each other, in their country, in the future they were protecting. She looked at directly. They did not surrender, Ambassador, even when everything was falling apart, even when the bullets were flying, even when the helicopter was going down. They did not surrender. Felt something stirring in his chest. That spark was now afire. I must tell the council, he said slowly. I must tell them what I have learned here, about humans, about courage, about the power of never giving up. Sarah nodded. Then go, she said. Tell them, show them what we showed you. Maybe it will make a difference. Turned to leave, then he stopped. There is something I want to ask, he said. When the helicopter flies again, I want to be here. I want to see it. Will you wait for me? Sarah smiled warmly. We have waited 100 years for this moment, Ambassador. We can wait a little longer. Left that day, he traveled across the galaxy. He arrived at the council chambers just in time. The scene was chaos. Representatives were shouting. Some were crying. Some were demanding immediate surrender. Others were calling for war. No one could agree. No one had hope. Stood at his platform, he waited for silence. Then he spoke. I have spent the past 14 months on Earth, he said, living among humans, learning from them, and I have discovered something that our ancient species never understood. The chamber went quiet. Everyone was listening. Humans are not like us, continued. They live short lives. They are fragile. They die easily, but they have something we do not have, something more powerful than any weapon, more unstoppable than any fleet. He paused. They have spirit, they have heart, they have the ability to hope when hope is gone, to fight when fighting is pointless, to love when love brings only pain. He told them about the helicopter, about Captain Walker and his crew, about in her 100-year wait, about William and the wooden bird his father carved for him, about humans who never forgot, never gave up, never surrendered. They are powerful, said. They have never been defeated, but they have never faced humans. They have never faced a species that does not know how to quit, that does not know how to surrender, that would rather die standing than live on their knees. He looked around the chamber. I say we do not surrender. I say we stand with the humans. I say we learn from them. And I say we fight, not because we can win, but because it is right, because that is what the humans would do, and because they have taught me that some things are worth fighting for, even if you lose. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then slowly one representative stood up, then another, then another. Within an hour the vote was taken. The Galactic Council would not surrender. They would stand and fight, with humanity leading the way. An ambassador smiled. For the first time in his 300 years of life, he understood what it meant to have hope. The battle was coming, the future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity had just changed the galaxy forever. And it all started with a helicopter, a 100-year-old pile of metal, and 4 young men who never gave up. Even in death, the war against the lasted 3 years. It was the bloodiest conflict the galaxy had ever seen. Millions of lives were lost. Entire star systems were destroyed. There were moments when defeat seemed certain, moments when even the strongest voices called for surrender. But humanity never wavered. They fought on every front. They died by the thousands. But for every human that fell, 3 more took their place. They were not the strongest species. They were not They did not have the best weapons or the fastest ships, but they had something that could not understand. They had heart, they had spirit, they had the stubbornness of a species that refused to die. And in the end, it was humanity that led the final charge. It was humanity that broke through the lines. It was humanity that destroyed the enemy fleet. The who had never lost a battle in their entire history were defeated by the youngest species in the Galactic Council. The galaxy was saved, and humans became legends. Ambassador survived the war. He had fought alongside humans in several battles. He had seen them sacrifice themselves for strangers. He had seen them carry wounded comrades through enemy fire. He had seen them laugh in the face of death. And through it all, he remembered the helicopter. He remembered the lesson he had learned in that Texas warehouse, the lesson that had changed the galaxy. When the war ended, returned to Earth, he went straight to the Phoenix Project warehouse. Sarah was there, older now, but still strong, still smiling. "You came back," she said. "I promised I would," replied. "Is it ready?" Sarah nodded. "It has been ready for 2 years. We were waiting for you." They walked outside. The sun was bright, the sky was clear, and there on the runway stood the helicopter, fully restored, gleaming in the light, looking exactly as it had over 100 years ago, when it first carried 4 young men into the sky. There was a crowd gathered, thousands of people, humans from all over the world, and aliens from across the galaxy. They had all come to witness this moment. Walker was there. She was 93 now, frail but determined. She sat in a wheelchair at the front of the crowd. Her eyes never left the helicopter. William Jackson was there too, with his son, his grandson, his great-grandson, 4 generations of a family, all connected to a man who died before any of them were born. Families of the other crew members were there as well, descendants of Lieutenant Torres and Sergeant, people who had traveled thousands of miles to honor men they never knew. A pilot climbed into the cockpit. He was young, strong, a decorated hero of the war against the. He had been chosen for this honor, to be the first person to fly this helicopter in over a century. The engine started. The rotors began to spin. The familiar sound filled the air, a sound that had not been heard since 1969, a sound that brought tears to the eyes of everyone who understood its meaning. Slowly the helicopter lifted off the ground. It rose into the sky, higher and higher, until it was a small dot against the blue. The crowd cheered, they wept, they held each other. Watched with wonder. He felt that fire in his chest again, the fire that humans had lit inside him, the fire that would never go out. Sarah stood beside him. "They are flying again," she said softly. "Captain Walker, Lieutenant Torres, Sergeant, Private Jackson. After 100 years they are finally flying again." Nodded. "They never really stopped," he said. "They have been flying this whole time, in the hearts of everyone who remembered them, in the hope they gave to the galaxy, in the courage they inspired in us all." The helicopter circled overhead. It dipped its nose in salute. Then it flew toward the horizon, toward the setting sun, toward whatever waits beyond. Walker raised her hand. She waved goodbye. "Fly safe, my love," she whispered. "I will see you soon." The helicopter disappeared into the light. And the crowd fell silent, in respect, in honor, in love. That night there was a ceremony. The dog tags of the 4 crew members were placed in a museum, next to the photographs, the letters, the wooden bird. They would be preserved forever, so that no one would ever forget. Gave a speech. He told the galaxy about what he had learned on Earth, about humans and their unbreakable spirit, about love that survives death, about hope that never dies. "I came to Earth to study humans," he said. "I thought I would find a primitive species, young and foolish, still learning how to survive." He paused. "Instead, I found the oldest souls in the universe, beings who understood something that took my species 10,000 years to miss. The meaning of life is not to live forever. It is to live in such a way that you are never forgotten, to love so deeply that death cannot erase you, to fight so bravely that your spirit lives on in others. He looked at the crowd. Humans taught me this. 4 young men in a helicopter taught me this, and I will carry their lesson with me for the rest of my life, as will the entire galaxy. The ceremony ended. The crowd dispersed, but the impact of that day would last forever. Years passed, decades, centuries. The story of the helicopter became legend. Children on 1,000 worlds learned about Captain Walker and his crew, about their sacrifice, about the restoration that saved the galaxy. And every year, on the anniversary of that first flight, beings from across the universe would gather on Earth. They would watch a helicopter fly overhead. They would remember 4 young men who gave everything. And they would be reminded of the greatest truth in the universe: that humans never give up, never surrender, never forget. That is what makes them human. That is what makes them eternal. And that is why the galaxy will always remember them. Forever.